Sonic Super Special Issue 10. Oh, this is the Sonic and Sabrina the Teenage Witch crossover. I've always wanted to read the Sabrina comic when I was a kid. I remember seeing some strips of it in my Archie comics and liking that a lot more than the inherently repetitive Archie stories themselves. But I did watch a TV series, and I think I'm not of the majority opinion when I say that I like the college and post-college seasons way better. Before that, the show was obsessed with making Sabrina grab the idiot ball so that she could be lectured by her aunts, and it made her a really annoying character. At least in college, she grew up a little. But how well will she cross over with Sonic? They're both fantasy series and all, but Sabrina lives in the boring human world most of the time. We start out with an evil witch leader saying she's going to make a plan to punish Sabrina for the insult she heaped on her, and warping Sonic to her and brainwashing him at the same time. That's really smart on her part. Sonic immediately runs to Sabrina, who uses magic to protect herself with power pulses, whatever those are supposed to be physically. And of course, Sonic dodges them because he's fast. Why couldn't Sabrina have just paralyzed him with magic immediately instead of using the wrong spell? I bet you could say that about her every encounter with a magical enemy. They have to make her use the wrong spell or she'd be overpowered. Then, wait a minute, what's Sally doing here? And why is she not brainwashed? Then they seem to break the fourth wall by making Nicole annoyingly give you a recap on stuff she couldn't possibly know, telling you that the evil witch was the sorceress supreme of the other realm, who found Sonic while she was gazing into other realities because I guess there wasn't anything on TV. Nicole explains that Sally is here because she followed Sonic through the supernatural portal. Well, it sure is convenient that she happened to be close to Sonic at the time, so she could go through the portal. She is his girlfriend though, so it does make sense that she would be close to him. Oh, they brought back Sonic's turn his hands into buzzsaws somehow ability. That's great. I know he's a magical hedgehog, but not only is that not an established power of his, but he can also make a buzzsaw of himself with his spines. But instead he's using everything but them. Even his shoes have become buzzsaws, and still magically allow him to stand up for some reason, instead of falling over. How did Sally know Sabrina's name? Did someone say it in front of her? And I guess she's not commenting on Sabrina and Salem being magical because this is an alternate universe and she's seen plenty of Stranger Things. Not to mention it's a dangerous situation. Sabrina then warps Sonic away rather than magically freezing him in place and undoing the brainwashing. And you know, if she can't do the brainwashing because the spell is locked by the Supreme Enchantress and she's not powerful enough to unlock the enchantment, then the same should apply to her being able to affect Sonic with magic at all. You'd think she would have remembered to enchant him as a whole when sending him up against the witch. And if her plan was to kill Sabrina, why'd she send Sonic after her instead of just killing her herself with one of her thousands of different spells? I love the Sabrina show, but something tells me that with all the different spells the characters could do, I shouldn't be reviewing the franchise because they create a lot of plot holes, and I'd be there all day. Also, once again I have to ask why Sabrina's magic would be so picky as to force her to say 2 sentences that have to rhyme with that, and she can't just point and do it. Why can't she just point or snap her fingers? Naturally, Sally is annoyed with Sabrina for warping Sonic away because she's probably worried about his well-being, though she's not pointing out that she could have done some better spells. But fortunately, there's so many characters with the name S at the start of their name. It's so hard to say them all. Fortunately, Salem acts as the mediator to make them talk it out. This leads to them figuring out that it must have been Enchantra who sent Sonic there. Witches literally call their kids Enchantra? I mean, it sounds nice, but wouldn't magic be seen as so commonplace to witches that they wouldn't feel the need to name their kids magic-themed names? What's wrong with Sarah? Maybe it's just because she's royalty or something that she needs a special name to show off how powerful she is. But why would just being royalty make her have more magic than the other witches? Is she more pure-blooded? Then Enchantra complains about the fact that she spotted Sonic being warped to the top of an icy mountain through her Plaquefine's monitor, which makes perfect sense she has, since she's a witch, and also makes sense that she'd be here to watch it because she wants to see if her plan she just made worked. I like that they explained that the Secretary has to scan the planet for his energy signature using a computer to find his new location. So they're putting in more effort on having the magic make sense, not to mention having witches with magic work with computers, which is way more novel and interesting than Harry Potter insisting that magic and technology is incompatible just because Merlin and stuff were stories written in the Middle Ages. Enchantress sends Sonic a telepathic message to level Westbridge, as I wonder why she couldn't just point and level it herself. And we cut to Nicole giving Sally a map of Westbridge that she probably accessed by hacking into Sabrina's Wi-Fi magically to use Google Maps. She also is able to show Sonic's location on the map with a red dot, and that makes sense because she's Sonic's friend. So Rhoda probably put in his energy signature, as in his unique aura bioenergy fingerprints, into her database so that she could locate her friends at any time. So I'm sure this ability of hers creates plot holes every time she doesn't do this to locate a friend. Sabrina warps to her high school to try to stop Sonic, and without taking Sally and Salem with her, probably to keep them safe, but was completely unaware that Nicole would discover something else and require Sally and Salem to get to the school to warn her by themselves or something. Sabrina then trips Sonic by warping while sticking her leg out through the portal, which is pretty creative. Thank God her leg stayed connected to her body in the portal through quantum entanglement, or else it'd have detached from her completely. She then wastes time telling Sonic he's been brainwashed, and he decides to run around her to make her dizzy as revenge for tripping him. I like how he's still in character despite being brainwashed, saying it's a nice day out and everything. He then somehow makes his body below his head a blue tornado, before running around her again, this time bragging about making a vortex vacuum to suffocate her like that evil airbender. See, this is an ability of his that makes sense. He can control the wind with his speed, after all. Sabrina then warps the tree in front of Sonic to make him run into it and black out just as she does. And I misread that as "stay tuned for the concussion." Well, Sonic did run headfirst into a tree after all. And I'm guessing Sabrina will warp the tree back to its original place so that no one will notice that it magically teleported somewhere. Enchantress' secretary then complains that her contact with the hedgehog broke from him passing out, which makes no sense since it was already established that they were able to see him through invisible flying cameras. They weren't relying on seeing through his eyes, and thus him blacking out would make them unable to see anything near him. Then Sally and Salem somehow managed to warp straight to Enchantress. I know Salem still has his magical powers for some reason in this continuity when he was just a normal, if talking, cat in the show, but is he really allowed to just warp to the supreme sorceress of the other realm just like that on a whim? How does he know what her office looks like so that he could imagine it and warp to it? And if just any old witch, including transformed fugitives, are able to warp to her office, why doesn't it happen all the time? Is it punished really harshly? She should have enchanted her office against that anyways. So a major mistake on her part. Another major mistake is that Sally's risking her life to threaten the Enchantress just like that. Fortunately, Nicole has discovered something that threatens her very existence, and even more fortunately, the Enchantress is letting her talk instead of just immediately killing her and Nicole, or I'd think Sally was being a complete hot-headed moron here. Also, A2? It's supposed to be a toi. You don't use two at the end of a sentence.
Also, A is supposed to have a T at the end, and there's not supposed to be an accent indicating a higher pitch over the E. I guess that's just another Mobian French distinction.
Sally explains that the portal from Mobius to the other realm is still open, and warns her that if she doesn't close it, some supervillains from Mobius would eventually make their way here as well. Except most of the people she's showing her are either imprisoned or dead. Not that it matters, she's getting Nicole to manipulate her with a hologram, and the Enchantress probably doesn't know that, because she had so many other universes to spy on than Mobius that she probably totally missed the fact that Robotnik got killed off, Mammoth Mogul is sealed in the Master Emerald, Ixis is sealed in the Zone of Silence, and Enerjack lost his magical powers. It doesn't even look like that anymore. Then Sonic shows up, unbrainwashed, because, as Sabrina said earlier, she in fact can simply reverse this spell on him, even though you'd think the Enchantress would have put a lock on it. Maybe she just forgot. Pretty dumb mistake on her part, but this is someone who's impulsive and hot-headed enough to send an assassin after a girl for accidentally insulting her. She probably doesn't think too far ahead. I like how Sonic is absolutely enraged with her for enslaving his mind, naturally since that makes her almost no better than Robotnik. I also like how we have Sally contrast Sonic by playing her role as the careful mediator negotiating a peaceful argument. And I feel for Sally here, who's panicked as hell at Sonic potentially provoking a powerful witch to a fight and ruining the deal. Sally threatens to alert all the villains of Mobius to the other realm. I really hope that's a bluff, because that'd be a terrible thing for her to do. Enchantress, ever so stubborn, says that still won't avenge the insult Sabrina dealt her, and doesn't mention anything about, oh, I can deal with those villains myself, or I can just brainwash Sonic and you. Also, Sabrina says while helping Enchanter up that the spell was broken just because Sonic got knocked out. That actually does make more sense than the spell and him being breakable by a regular witch, but again, she should have been able to make a spell that's better at keeping itself working. Sabrina says that if Enchantra has a problem, she can discuss it with her. Wow, she's brave. I wonder if she has any personality differences between her and the live-action Sabrina. I haven't watched the show in a while, I just remember she's a perfectionist who uses spells to improve her life, and then they have stupid consequences because we need a plot for the episode, leading me to wonder why she even bothers. So Sabrina saying this somehow makes Enchantra warp Sonic and Sally back home, closing the portal. Maybe it really was her being intimidated by the villains and she just didn't want to admit it. That would make more sense. Also, she'll send them back with their memories so this whole thing wiped, purely for the sake of making this crossover something fans to the Sonic comics won't need to read because it'll never be referenced again. And then it turns out Enchantra was upset because Sabrina wrote a school report where she refers to her as Enchantra, CEO of Realm Co. Wait, she thought that was an insult? That's neutral. Confusing at worst. How oversensitive is she? Was she bullied as a kid or something? She's able to have access to a pointless spy network that gives her information like that, but that same spy network isn't good enough to tell her the context? And the crossover doesn't bother to explain why Sabrina mentioned Enchantra in the school report, and instead just refers you to an issue of Sabrina's comic. Thanks for nothing. It'd make more sense if she mentioned her as a fictional character in a writing course, but a school report? Sabrina nervously lies that she fictionalized her real name because those mortals could never truly comprehend her glory. Unfortunately, once again, I've said this a lot this issue, Enchantra is gullible enough to believe her, hook, line, and sinker, even though Sabrina has shown every indication before the point that she didn't have that high of an opinion of her. And the story ends with Sabrina being forgiven, and Sonic forgetting all about wanting to talk about his relationship and going right back to wanting to fight bad guys. It's a shame, I wanted to know what he was going to say. Oh, there's actually another story after this. We finally get to see the anti-freedom fighters again, who once again are doing everything for absolutely no reason. They tried and failed to get into Dr. Kintobar's vet clinic because it turns out there's a force field. First, why didn't they already know about that? Is the force field specially designed to only block out them from entering? Must be, since otherwise it wouldn't let anyone else who needs to enter it come in. Second, why did it take Kintobar this long to make a force field like this? If he was capable of doing it, he should have always been doing it. So after the anti-freedom fighters leave, disappointed that they couldn't do something evil for no adequately explained reason, we see Kintobar finally having a good distinct design, as he's skinny and lost the black and red eyes. He watches Scourge toss some trash over his shoulder through an invisible flying camera, since Scourge, despite being able to run at the speed of sound to a garbage can in less than a second, is still too lazy to do even that, even though it would show off his powers. I can understand that, especially since he's still in a bad mood. But what I can't understand is why the good Robotnik would ever bother to make flying invisible security cameras everywhere to spy on people. Kintobar decides in resignation to get his sweetbots to clean up the litter before he and his friends could turn the Great Forest into a garbage dump. First off, I didn't know the vet office was in the Great Forest. And second, I like that he called them his friends. But seriously, Great Forests having a vet office in it? I mean, wouldn't it be better to put it in a residential area or, well, not in a residential area, like in a city?
And wait, then he said the same as they did to Mobatatropolis. So why didn't he get his sweetbots to prevent that from ever happening? And why would they? That doesn't make any sense. I overlooked that text box the first time because I didn't think he was saying it, because it's a text blurb for some reason instead of a text bubble. But that doesn't make any sense that they'd even be able to get to that point where they'd turn the whole city into a garbage dump, because one, there should be garbage men in that city whose job it is to clean up litter, even if the sweetbots don't exist in that city. And they pretty clearly implied in a previous issue that his sweet bots were all over the world. I mean, well, I guess he never said that, but I wouldn't put it past him to put them all over the world. So, first off, how did the city even progress to that point without garbage men and sweet bots, or even homeless people who want to collect cans and make money off them, cleaning up all the garbage? I mean, they'd have to literally try to make it a garbage dump by, like, pouring garbage from other countries all over the place, and what would they have to gain from that exactly? I mean, I don't approve of, like, evil for the sake of evil in characters, because it's stupid and doesn't make any sense. How would they have anything to gain from polluting their own city that Anti-Sally's probably the ruler of, to the point where they can't live in that city they used to like to live in anymore, and now have to live in the Great Forest, which is more nature-y, and you'd think if they're a polluting type, they would also be portrayed as not liking to live in a nature-y place. That's such a stupid line that shouldn't have been put in because it doesn't make any sense. It's just like a lazy half-assed way of saying, how do we make these guys portrayed as evil? Make a whole city a garbage dump. Yeah, because that makes perfect sense.
Sadly, the friends thing isn't going to hold true. Alicia complains that Kintobar made us look like complete idiots. Again! And says that Scourge used to be such a go-getter, asking what happened to the hedgehog who helped her toss her father into his own asylums. What does she mean by go-getter? I looked it up and it says, an aggressively enterprising person, high achiever. Okay, and then her next sentence there. That's her problem right there. There aren't any other important significant people for him to throw into his own asylums. This is apparently a world where the only major villain other than these guys was Alicia's father, who I assume was a corrupt and selfish terrible king to the point where his own daughter became fed up with him. Also, where's the anti-Alias? Maybe he's dead. Who knows? She and Scourge are sitting together at a desk with two big chairs behind it, implying that they're dating and co-leaders. Also, we have a fourth wall-breaking moment where Boomer and Miles are making graffiti on the wall of their own gang's castle, which says the name of some staff who worked on the comic. This makes absolutely no sense in the universe because they wouldn't know who those people are. I'd imagine them wanting to make something else with the paint instead, an actual picture, rather than meaningless to them words. And again, it's Alicia's castle. Why isn't she mad at them for it? And what's the point of making graffiti on a wall if you're allowed to do it? And if the graffiti is just words and not even art you could really want to make for the sake of it? It was just a stupid, ill-thought-out fourth wall-breaking moment to lazily make them look like generic thugs instead of actually giving them proper motivations to characters. You could have had Miles playing a violin, or playing a piano nearby, or playing chess or something. Anyways, after Alicia asks where the old enthusiastic Scourge is gone, Patch has a good line where he snorts, he's off powdering his nose, perhaps, while risking getting himself injured by cleaning his teeth with his own sword. You better be careful with that, Patch, or you might end up scarring your own cheek that way. Then Patch shows he's way less of a restrained coward than Antoine was by openly flirting with Scourge's girlfriend right in front of him, even though he should know that Scourge can run at the speed of sound and thus punch him at that speed too. So you'd think he'd be more afraid of the most powerful member of their team, unless he spent enough time with them to learn that Scourge holds back around living beings to avoid traumatizing Miles from spin dashing through a person at the very least. So maybe Patch has a reason to not be afraid of Scourge, especially since instead of getting furious and attacking him for not only flirting with his girlfriend and getting her interested, but also threatening to have her hand over his authority to him, instead of getting furious and jealous, which Sonic did to Jeffrey, Scourge just rashly laughs, and then acts surprised when someone like Patch throws a knife at him. It is pretty interesting that Alicia's interested in Patch, that in some world out there, Antoine actually did get a chance with the girl he originally wanted. But yeah, that's weird. Like, the evil twin of Sonic is less jealous than Sonic is. Sonic was absolutely furious with Jeffrey for trying to make a move on his girlfriend. And Scourge is just like, nah, whatever. He finally sticks up for himself after the knife got thrown by throwing a chain around Patch, actually using the chain weapons we saw his friends with for one. Although I thought that was Patch's weapon. Now all of a sudden, Patch has a much more lethal looking weapon to the point of trying to use it to try to murder Scourge right in front of a kid. Doesn't think too far ahead, does he? I'm surprised that Scourge is keeping his cool like this. Even though he puts a chain around him, his dialogue is so deadpan, full of tranquil fury, like he's holding back in front of Miles. Give it a rest, Ant. Like he's holding back when you'd expect the evil version of Sonic to be less restrained than that. Especially after Sally had to restrain Sonic from a violent rage against Enchantra as a contrast. I'm not complaining, as this makes him have more depths. He then complains this is the 4th time Patch has tried to kill him this week, or rather ice him. The exact same phrase that Sonic used in the recap story when talking about Eggman. If Patch had been trying to kill his own teammate that often, why hasn't he been kicked out by now? You'd think he would have gotten in huge trouble after doing it even once. Be shunned by his friends or feared by them because they wouldn't trust him not to do the same to them. Especially since he's doing this in front of a child. You'd think if anyone would be unnerved and startled by those attempts on Scourge's life, it would be a little kid. But I guess the explanation is supposed to be that everyone has been getting increasingly more fed up with Scourge, as illustrated by Alicia siding with Patch, although it still doesn't explain why everyone isn't scared of Patch and paranoid that he would do the same to them if they annoyed him enough. So with that, the anti-freedom fighters walk out on Scourge. Wait a minute, it's Alicia's castle! Why isn't he being kicked out? They're gonna ditch him just like that, just because he hasn't arbitrarily killed Kintobar already? Well, to be fair, it took him until now to make a force field around his office. If Scourge hadn't killed him by running up to him at the speed of sound by then it's obvious that he's been holding back. And it makes sense that Alicia and Patch would disapprove of that. But yeah, so what if there's a force field blocking us from Kintobar? They can't blame Scourge for that. It's not his fault he's not immediately thinking of a way to deal with it. If anything, they should be yelling at Boomer because he's supposed to be the genius of the group, but he's not coming up with a smart plan to get around it. Imagine if the Freedom Fighters ditched Sonic just because he didn't get past the force field around Eggman's base right away. That's just what this is. It's the lamest excuse to ditch the most powerful and capable member of their team. If we had seen more of how Scourge's personality was annoying his friends, to the point of his powers not being worth it, we would have seen what he did to potentially deserve this and justify this. But instead, this random ditching comes completely out of nowhere, considering that the last time we saw all of these guys, Alicia was all into him for thinking up the plan to bring them to fight their twins on Mobius Prime. Although granted, she did attack him when we first saw her in that issue. But that was just because she was bored and wanted a challenge, not because she literally hated him.
What, does he have to have plans like that every day?
I mean, so what if he can't find another person to throw into his own asylums? What, does he have to have plans like that every day? It should be obvious a solution. Just do more zone hopping with them if it makes them so happy. Just suggest it so they'll stop walking away. They clearly don't need to be home for that, as they were having even more fun outside their world than they were wasting time fighting Kintobar, which I've never seen them even crack a smile at. Alicia's whole he's not a go-getter anymore argument just comes out of nowhere as an excuse. You can't blame him for not being a high achiever when he doesn't have anything truly important left to achieve. On this world, anyway. There's no evil Eggman to fight. So the Freedom Fighters here are just going through the motions and fighting the good one out of boredom. All of their work is just pointless, because they've no one to really fight. And maybe a part of Scourge knows that, which is why he doesn't really have the enthusiasm and motivation anymore, and why he always looks so annoyed and unhappy all the time. He knows it's pointless. Kintobar has done nothing really wrong to deserve their hatred, other than making them look like idiots. He'd be way happier with a life like Sonic's, and he might even know that deep down. Gives him another reason to hate him out of jealousy for that. Miles then says a line that comes completely out of nowhere with no foreshadowing that he supposedly lied to Scourge about being his trusty sidekick, even though a trusty sidekick is something a hero would say, a superhero thing. He obviously used to view Scourge as some sort of superhero, which did embarrass Scourge with his desire to have a villain reputation for some suspicious reason. Maybe for Scourge being the first person to be nice to him or something. Unless he really did admire him that fanatically much, I don't see why he would have gone to lengths of saying something like that in the first place, instead of just saying, "You're cool, you're reliable, I admire you." Instead, he goes out of his way to say he's a trusty sidekick? You'd think he'd be embarrassed to go to such lengths to say such a thing. especially for an evil twin. I mean, later on in the comic, he'll prove that he's not the type to go that far with the manipulating, because he still insults Tails even when he's trying to peacefully negotiate with Sally and get her to trust him. If he was the type to keep telling lies and manipulating for that long, to the point of showing a fake side of him, he would have had the restraint to not enrage Tails in a delicate situation and instead acted nice to everyone. So since we've established that he's not the type to do that, why would he lie about admiring him so much that he calls himself his trusty sidekick? It's more likely that he's really embarrassed about saying that and meaning it when he was little. It makes more sense that he's only saying this to spite Scourge, to let him know how it feels to be disappointed and let down for once. My theory was always that Scourge spent too much time kissing his girlfriend and stuff and made Miles feel really neglected, leading to a lot of resentment, so he used to like him enough to say that and mean it, but it's not so simple anymore. It makes sense that the evil version of Tails would have a huge problem with not getting enough attention from his big brother when the good Tails was able to be more patient and get along with Sonic just fine. Anyways, there's so many plot holes that I'm losing track of myself. Scourge feels hurt at being walked out on and vows revenge on his friends one by one. Makes sense. Does he really have the guts to go through with it against Miles, though? He's the one that he was the most hurt at him leaving. I mean, we've never gotten a firm establishing of their relationship. Just one panel or sentence saying that he was his trusty sidekick, and the same panel where we're supposed to believe it wasn't really true. That's so lazy. Then it seems like Robotnik shows up to make a deal with him. I actually laughed at Scourge's remark here. It's gonna take way more than a freaky light show to get my attention, bud. Then after Scourge is gullible and naive enough to trust Robotnik not to roboticize him, and to, for absolutely no reason, help him out, we cut to the Freedom Fighters in a zone 180 degrees away having a picnic. For some reason, Sally was expecting some more out of Sonic saying he wanted to ask her something. He gets disappointed. Wait a minute, why did Uncle Chuck make these chili dogs? He's around, he has free will, did he not have the time? If he makes the best chili dogs ever, why would they have Antoine make some? Then Sonic shows up, warning Sonic immediately of a new menace threatening some zones, as I wonder why the hell he wasn't doing his job the last time Scourge did the exact same deal earlier, and Sonic is taken to the No Zone headquarters, where we see that Sonic has been spying on every single other Sonic at the same time. Because he can totally focus on every single monitor at once. This is a job that only would be done well by having one person for every monitor. At this point, his attention is going to be so divided, it's a wonder he even noticed Scourge's plan at all. You know what, with this kind of clusterfuck of an office, maybe it does make sense he's been sucking at his job. Wait, what? Somehow, Scourge duped every single one of the other Sonics into handing over the remains of Robo-Robotnik's giant Borg. Are you kidding me? And they just kept the remains instead of destroying them? Why would they hold on to them? The only way I could see that working is if Scourge got dressed up in a disguise so no one knew he was the evil one, and told them that they needed to assemble the robots and deal with an evil threat. So why did the panel show us that instead of a pointless recap about the last time all the Sonics got together? And really, every Sonic fell for it. Every single one. Even the ones who were more serious and cynical. Also, Sonic says he somehow hitched a ride to the other zones. So we notice that Scourge has a plan like this, but he didn't see him make that deal with a Robotnik. How didn't he get duped just like all the other Sonics then? And when Sonic points out that Zone Cops are the only ones who can send someone to another reality, asking how Scourge got in touch with the other Sonics, I immediately wonder why he didn't just assume he ran through portals that just showed up to the Cosmic Interstate. The thing is that if Sonic's in charge of making every single portal like to show up, why was Scourge or that Robotnik able to do zone traveling at all? And Sonic tries to justify it with the barriers between zones weakened by the Ultimate Annihilator, anything's possible. But Scourge lives on Anti-Mobius, where the Ultimate Annihilator was never even built. Are you telling me that Eggman's weapon affected the entirety of the multiverse? That's some range! It turns out that the one Sonic aside from Sonic and Prime Sonic who wasn't tricked yet was the Sonic Underground one. It makes perfect sense that there would be an alternate dimension for Sonic Underground. Why not?
And then Sonic Underground Sonic mistakes Sonic for evil Sonic.
And even though he very clearly has green eyes and buckles on his shoes, distinguishing him effortlessly from his evil twin. Yeah, that really is a problem for Scourge if he ever tries to disguise himself as him again. Because without those green eyes, he'd logically be screwed. It's finally explained why Sonic Underground Sonic wasn't recruited to fight the giant Borg. Sonic had forgotten to recruit them, because there's so many Sonics to keep track of. So, you think they'd make a list and run it down, checking it one at a time? That's no excuse. What's even more inexcusable is that the Sonic didn't even have a file on Sonic Sonia Mania from the start. We're talking about the Zone Cops here, who were able to spy on every single Sonic ever, and yet they forgot a universe? Then Sonia and Manic waste time explaining how their own universe is. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting world building, but from an in-universe perspective, they're just wasting Sonic and Sonic's time by saying all this. The key difference in Sonic Underground Robotnik is that he left the wealthy people to pay for his factories while everyone else was roboticized. I guess this Robotnik was a real cheapskate, but still, leaving the rich and powerful with the free will to oppose him? That's pretty stupid. Sonia, Sonic, and Manic's mother was a queen with purple hair, and yet none of her kids have purple hair because I guess it's a recessive gene. But yeah, how the hell does an alternate version of Sonic exist with a totally different mother? Don't you need the exact same DNA to be a counterpart of someone? This Sonic wouldn't have the exact same DNA because his mother's half would be completely different. So after that huge plot hole making the Sonic's mere existence arbitrary, we're told that his mother had to take her kids into hiding after a bounty was placed on their head for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Then the Oracle of Delphius appeared to her, and told her that she'd have to give her kids up to save for their lives. And we have an interesting three-way split, where Sonia was raised by a kindly rich lady, Manic was raised by a good-natured thief, why he'd be trusted to raise a prince we'll never know, and Sonic grew up with his Uncle Chuck, who was also an inventor. It makes sense that they wouldn't all be raised by the rich, because then all three of them would be more visible to the public by being rich, and the Queen probably wanted two of her kids to understand the situation of the lower class people to be better rulers. Although unless she runs a 3-liter kingdom, there can only be one ruler, and it really shouldn't be the one raised by the thief, so it's not like she chose him for the lowest class for that. It just so happens that all three of them joined a band together by coincidence, and it was only then that the Oracle of Delphius revealed their true history together. Then Uncle Chuck was roboticized, as well as the people who raised Sonia and Manic. My question is, what took him so long? I thought he was roboticizing everyone who wasn't rich enough to financially support him. So what happened? Did Chuck and Lady whatever used to be rich and then fall on hard times? While the thief was just really good at hiding for a while? After that, Sonia and her siblings decided to form a resistance group to try to reunite with their mom and become the Council of Four and overthrow Robotnik once and for all. How would becoming the Council of Four do that? I can understand why Sonia and Manic are so surprised by the names Princess Sally and Tails. Sally is way too informal of a name for a princess, and Tails, well, he put it best. What kind of name is that? Especially without knowing the context. But yeah, I like the idea of Sonia and Manic. It really is a shame that they're barely used in the comic at all. I don't even know if they appear after this point. I like how Sonia is, like, very proper, like a proper lady. So that's pretty interesting. And Manic, even more interestingly, is a thief. So he's basically not as lawful, but he's still a hero, so he's a lovable rogue. I can imagine that being a pretty entertaining character. And it's also ironic as hell how he's related to Sonic, and he has green fur. Like a certain other hedgehog with green fur. Then we see Scourge coming up to Robotnik with some dingo bounty hunters that I guess he was working with, and then immediately the Robotnik says he doesn't know what's come over him and decides to roboticize Scourge. And somehow, Scourge gets effortlessly imprisoned and restrained by the dingoes, even though he can run and attack at the speed of sound. I guess he was so stunned and caught off guard that they were able to grab him while he was distracted. He also reveals that he loves chili dogs just as much as Sonic does. Then Robotnik thinks that Scourge's deal was with me, not him, and complains in his thoughts about alternate reality mix-ups costing him the giant Borg by Scourge mistaking a Robotnik for him. I don't get it though. Wouldn't Scourge have a go straight to his boss button on the portable dimensional transporter I assume he's been using to do all that zone hopping? The Robotnik who hired Scourge says that he'll have to forego the battle suit because he doesn't have time, and goes into a green tube and disappears, saying he already has enough in his arsenal to get rid of Sonic. All the while being stupid enough not to rescue someone as powerful as an alternate Sonic so that he could be his henchman again. Then we see the Sonic Underground Robotnik attacking Robotropolis full of non-roboticized people using the giant Borg. So are all of those people rich? I thought he wanted to keep the rich around so they could finance him, so why is he risking their lives by attacking them? He brags about having defeated an infernal hedgehog. I guess he means Scourge, even though he'd normally mean Underground Sonic. And turns out he did mean Underground Sonic, because that same one, taunting the giant Borg, provokes that Robotnik to remark that he thought his bounty hunters already dealt with him. Wait, so why didn't Scourge get a clue that the bounty hunters weren't on his side? The underground Robotnik sees his giant Borg attacked by a bunch of Sonics, who lead a heat-seeking missile to it. We cut back to the bounty hunters, who assume that the disguised Sonic and Mania were aristocrats without even questioning why they're dressed in cloaks. And they, along with Sonic, get Scourge arrested by Sonic for high treason. And Scourge has no choice but to go with him because it's the only way out of the cell. But come on, the minute he goes into that portal, he should be able to just take off running. He only has handcuffs, not anything restraining his legs. But instead he was able to be imprisoned easily, even though we weren't seeing him be grabbed by anyone. And then the story ends with him fainting and seeing himself being replaced in the anti-freedom fighters by evil Jeffrey. Although Miles doesn't exactly look happy to see his replacement. And Sonic shows that he loves chili dogs just as much as Scourge does. The first story was by Mike Gallagher. I've always wanted to read the Sabrina comic. I liked the TV show as a kid. So I had a lot more fun with this crossover than with the previous one because I at least cared about both franchises this time. So it's a shame that once again, the crossover paid way more attention to the non-Sonic universe, with Sabrina getting practically no exposure to Mobius, which could have been interesting, and with Sonic's role in the story being a humiliating get brainwashed. The Freedom Fighters weren't really made use of well here. Enchantress seems like an interesting villain, although I cringe for the people who have to be ruled by someone like her, and I hope she at least has some kind of fruity excuse to make her a more believable character. It was fine enough, but really basic and bare bones in the plot, really driving home how many times the story was driven by luck. And the second story was by Carl Bullers, and finally we got to see the anti-freedom fighters again, but only for a very small amount of time before they ditch him, and he makes a plan that ends up getting him put in prison. Considering they did absolutely nothing to make him a more fleshed out, believable character, and all the times that they've used him and his friends, I can handle them putting him and the rest of the anti-freedom fighters on the back burner for a long while. They've proven they don't give a shit about writing them. So many characters, not a single one of them with a proper fruit and excuse, and you need that for an evil version of a hero more than anyone else, because they have literally the same DNA as them. As for the story itself, there are a lot of plot holes, although it at least explains Sonic's incompetence throughout the series, as him having to watch 60 billion different cameras at once at all times, so naturally he would miss a lot of things, like Underground Sonic for one. The story seemed underwhelming for what its premise was. It didn't feel nearly as epic as the last story that involved the giant Borg. I liked getting a glimpse into the Sonic Underground universe. The whole Sonic has siblings from a queen raised in different social classes thing is really creative and intriguing, as is the Eggman left the rich to finance him concept. But it wasn't taken advantage of at all, as the giant Borg gets defeated about as instantly as the last one. And we never see the Sonic Underground universe explored again. Which sucks because now the only way you can experience it is through that awful TV show. The last time the giant Borg was activated, it required the combined force of almost every Sonic spin dash to take it down. But now it's defeated with just one heat-seeking missile that the Borg should have been immune to if it was so damn special. And I hated Miles' line here, raising all sorts of questions that never get answered, and him and Boomer confusingly spray-painting names that should be meaningless to them in Alicia's own castle. And Scourge being walked out on in Alicia's castle instead of being kicked out of it. Also, why didn't Scourge even ask how Sonic got green eyes? Why didn't he notice something like that? So yeah, a lot of plot holes. Well, next up is issue 73.